This is Greg Pass with the Americans of Wartime Experience. Today's date is June the 3rd, 2023, and I am in Reading, Pennsylvania, World War II weekend. I have the pleasure to sit down with Jamie Homyak. Jamie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Jamie, tell us your full name and where you were born.
My full name is Jamie Homyak. I was born in Pottsville, Pennsylvania.
And do you have any military veterans in your family?
My father served in the Marines. He was a veteran for the Korean War.
And what was your motivation to enter into military service?
One of my cousins was serving in the Marines during the Beirut bombing, and at the time it was very like a big impact.
Uh-huh.
So
you enlisted?
Yes.
And how old were you when you made that decision?
I was 18 at the time.
18. So when you enlisted, did you have a certain military occupational specialty? What kind of training did you have to go through after basic training?
I had gone for finance training. 73 Charlie was the MOS. It changed over to 44 Charlie.
Gotcha. And how long is that training?
That was approximately 10 weeks. I did it at Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana.
And I'm sorry, what year was this?
So I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training in 1998, and I completed training at Fort Benjamin Harrison for the finance training in January 1989.
Okay. And you are retired, is that correct?
Yes.
So what year did you retire?
In 2010.
2010. Okay. And your entire career, were you in finance your entire career?
Yes, I was in finance in the Army Reserves.
Gotcha.
For the entire time.
Army Reserves. And what rank did you get out as?
Staff Sergeant, E6.
Sergeant E6?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about a little bit. You've done a lot, obviously, over all these years. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about Iraqi freedom. So, at what point in time did you realize that you were going to be involved in operations overseas in Iraq?
So my original unit I was with was the 374th Finance Battalion in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania, and I received a phone call beginning of December of 2002, and the unit told me I'm going to be transferred to the 320th MP Battalion in Ashley, Pennsylvania. And from there, I did a weekend training up there, and I was transferred to that unit in Ashley.
And when did you get your orders to go to overseas to Iraq?
So our unit was activated February 10th of 2003.
And so at that point, when you say activated, you were aware you're actually being deployed, or that you were just going to...
That was our, yeah, so we were aware as soon as I got transferred to the 320th, the unit was going to be deployed overseas.
Gotcha.
So we were just doing our weekend trainings in preparation to get activated. That happened February 10th.
Gotcha. Were you married at
Yes.
the time? And how did your family take the news that you were going to be heading overseas?
Well, I was actually dating, and it was a Monday, February 10th, and I called my girlfriend, and we got married that evening.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah, we laughed too.
Did you propose to her? And
On the phone, I called her up. I called her up in the morning.
Good for you.
And she goes, I see what I can do. And I asked for permission to be dismissed a little early. And we went down to the courthouse 30 minutes before they closed. Got the paperwork. And then the Tamaqua mayor had married us.
Wow. So she woke up in the morning with
Yes.
a boyfriend and went to bed at night. And she's got a ring on her finger. She's
Yes.
married.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
And then a few weeks later, we went to Fort Dix down for our training.
Mm-hmm. So, did you go overseas on military aircraft or civilian aircraft?
It was a civilian aircraft. I actually don't recall. I believe it was a German civilian aircraft carrier. We flew from Fort Dix and we arrived over in Kuwait. It was March 15th of 2003.
Kuwait.
Yep.
So what was your initial impression when you got on the tarmac in Kuwait? Hot, cold? What was the temperature like? What was your first impression?
Yeah, Rod grabbed the gear and I was like, where are we going next? And we grabbed we got on buses and we took our bus ride down to Camp Arif John, Kuwait.
Okay.
So
What is that camp like? Is it
So they actually had installed like giant warehouses, and that's where we slept in. They had I think they had barracks. I was never told officially, but I assumed it was for probably 2,000 soldiers, maybe for that camp. And my impression, there was probably over 20,000 soldiers there when we arrived. So it was not long after then. We had the scud alerts, and we were in mop gear for hours. So
keeping in mind that some people watching this video might not be that aware of Operation Iraqi Freedom, give us a general time zone on what was going on during the conflict. How long have we been involved when you got there? You said March of 2003?
Yep, 2003.
Okay, so were we fully engaged at that point in Iraq?
So we were just like my unit was just in like this preparation, and we had other soldiers that were in like our we had the giant warehouse facility. They just had lines of bunks lined up, and some of them were there one day, and the next day they were gone. So,
Gotcha.
And then several soldiers from our unit moved out, and they were assisting. And then it was April 2nd, I believe. I had gone up to Camp Freddy, and they changed the name to Camp Buka in Iraq, and that's a prison war camp at the town of Qusar, the port city.
Okay.
So we could see from the hill. We can actually see the ships. So it was pretty amazing, the situation where we got bussed up. So
you start off in Kuwait and then move
yes.
north.
So the first couple of weeks we were in Iraq, in Kuwait. It was to help get acclimated to the temperature difference, because a few weeks before we were in Fort Dix, we actually had a snowstorm with I don't know how many inches of snow we had, and we were out at the range climbing through snow, and then a couple of weeks later there we are in 90, 100 degree temperatures, and doing always drink water, and be observant of how much you're drinking and your buddy.
Yeah, a little different.
Yes.
A little different back home. So you mentioned the scuds and the concern for chemical attack.
Yes.
What preparations did you guys take in preparation for a potential chemical attack? Were you guys doing drills, NBC drills, stuff like that?
So we had our mop gear, and so when the alarm sounded, we would immediately get into our mop gear, and then we wait for the all clear. So it's very interesting. At one point, they had a media tent set up. So the tent had they had like 3 TVs up, and one was CNN, and we were sitting there, and the guy announcer comes over. Okay, there's another scud alert going off, and we're sitting there. We're just in our regular gear, and like he's just said a scud alert, and like 2 minutes later, the scud alert siren had gone off, and we had to get in our mop gear. Mm-hmm. It's just like the news had it before before Camp Air John put it up.
Describe what full mop gear is.
So it's everything from your gas mask to your protective overcoat and pants and boots. So we had to remain in our mop gear until the all clear was given. And some of the times it was up to 3 hours, I believe we were in, and there were several alerts that we had gone through. So we had
very comfortable.
Yeah, not.
So when you jump forward to the base in Iraq itself, where are you working? Are you in like a tent? What?
Originally we were told it was called Camp Freddy. It was a British camp, but it had changed its name to Camp Buka. So it was a prisoner of war camp. We were there for 4 months. So we lived in tents, and it was a sandy location. So when I would go to sleep I was overnights. I would go to sleep, and I wake up, and you can just peel off the sand off your face. The sand blew everywhere. It's just you see dust devils, and then I worked on a processing line for the prisoners. Prisoners be brought in. We'll take their all their information, their name, we would actually do what was called a BATS. BATS was a biometric automatic tool set from the FBI. So take a picture of their eye, a fingerprint, and then the picture would be like a scan picture.
Which is probably cutting edge at the time.
Yes.
So you're a finance guy. So what was the?
So I worked on the processing line where we brought the prisoners in, and then we helped with accountability. And finance was originally designed that if a prisoner had ever worked, they would have to be paid. But they determined at the beginning of the war, no prisoner is going to be working.
Okay, gotcha.
So once they said, okay, that portion is going to be pushed off to the side, myself, there was only a few other finance soldiers, and we just assisted with the processing line,
Gotcha.
and we helped the prisoners come through. So
what was your impression of the prisoners? Did some of them appear to be kind of happy that they were in custody, or were they
overall we had no
violent,
no real issues. The MPs would assist with the moving of the prisoners that come into the processing line. They'll sit down, we'll do a quick interview with the prisoner. They'll do like accountability of all their personal assets, what they had in possession, what they're allowed to keep, if they had the Quran, or if they have any type of religious information or anything they had, they're allowed to keep, and then they'd be moved on to the next prisoner.
Gotcha.
So.
And were there any particular incidents that stand out in your mind when you were dealing with the prisoners? Did any of them speak English? Was it 100% translation? I mean,
Yep, there were several that spoke English. One incident that always stands out in my mind. It was near July 4th. We had flares go up and sirens were going off, and we knew that there was some type of activity down at the prison, and they said there was escapees coming. So suddenly we heard a commotion, and there was British soldiers detaining prisoners on the ground, and then they moved them away. But it's just like not so close to it was very close to our tent, and it's like because the compound is very far away.
So the British soldiers, did you work with them a lot?
Myself, no, I did not. Met a few, talked to a few. We also had some Spanish soldiers that were there.
Spanish, really?
Yes, there was a detachment with the medical, so I didn't get to speak to anybody. But I heard that there's a unit that was assisting.
Let's talk a little bit about like food. Were you eating?
So we started.
A mess tent?
Well, we started out with MREs for a few weeks, and then they set up a MKT, mobile kitchen unit, and we were given was it? I believe it was one breakfast. Then we still continued with one MRE. So and then they were setting up a trailer. A civilian unit, civilian contractor came in and set up a trailer where we would get fed breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Gotcha.
But that was a couple months after we were there.
How long were you there total?
So we were there for about 4 months. So I believe it was April 2nd and end of July, I believe.
Gotcha.
And then after there, I have gone to Abu Ghraib prison, is the way we had said it. Another way you said it was.
I probably said it wrong. I've heard it many ways.
Yes.
Abu
Abu Ghraib. Yep. So that's the way I pronounce it. Is the way I heard it. The way we said
probably
it.
the right way.
When we were there. So the way you said it is the way it's mostly said over the news.
Yeah. So tell me about your observations there.
So when we were at Camp Bucco, we were in the desert, sand, and tents. When we went to Abu Ghraib prison, they actually had, it was like a 4 complex compounds. There were like 2 stories prison, and one of the prisons was converted for soldiers to stay in. So we actually stayed inside a concrete building. So another facility was being retrofitted, and we called it the hard site. And then the hard site was for extreme prisoners. And then they had tents set up, the tent compound. That was where general prisoners were put. So it was just a giant field. They came they came with bulldozers and flattened the area, and then they set up tents, and then they put concertina wire around, and then they start moving prisoners in. So
were you doing the same kind of work that you were at the previous camp?
Yep, prisoner processing. So
I assume this was before the news hit about the problems they had at the
so there was a prisoner. How do you say it? So like a prisoner war crimes that U.S. soldiers had done against Iraqi prisoners. So that was sometime in the time frame of January or February. So I knew a couple of the people, but only knew the situation after I came home. It was like, how do you miss that, or how? But I never seen anything that was wrong or out of the ordinary. But so being with the processing of the prisoners, like I don't know the whole situation. So when I got home, it was like blasted over the news, and it's like I don't even watch TV. So when I got home, I didn't even want to watch the news or see any of the you did so much. All the MPs, all the soldiers in the 320th, and all the soldiers that were deployed at Abu Ghraib prison, all their efforts, it seems like it gave a black eye. So all the hard work all the soldiers had done. So, but it was a surprise of hearing what had gone on.
Yeah.
So because they had all the pictures of what some of the prisoners were in positions and stuff. So
yeah. So how did you communicate with your new bride?
So mostly I sent letters home at Camp Buka. We had a couple phone calls we were allowed to make, but it was very funny. They're trying to talk, and then you had to pause, and then she could talk, and she had to pause because there was a time delay. So if you talk too fast, you overlap your conversation. It was when we got to Abu Ghraib prison, we were there for a number of months, and they set up what was called an internet cafe, and then we had more. We could type letters and use the email. So.
Did you get care packages at all?
Yeah. My wife was sending me a package like every 3-4 weeks. She was sending me a little bit of food or some magazines, stuff like that.
Does that help for morale?
Yes. Get a package in, you share. Hey, what do you get in? She sent a couple bags of Twizzlers in, and then the one soldier goes, I haven't had that in forever. And like, you share and put a big smile on people's faces. And
yeah, good stuff.
Yes.
What about the Iraqi community civilians? Did you guys have any opportunity to interact with them at all, like the general population?
Overall, so I almost never traveled. So when I was at Camp Buka, ride by bus, they did have a couple pickup trucks and stuff, but I think I was on a pickup truck. We did a water detail a few times where they receive water on pallets, hop on like a deuce and pick up all the water, and then they put it inside the tent.
Mm-hmm.
But I was almost never in a vehicle like for the entire 4 months. So it's like getting a vehicle is kind of strange.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you think about your time overseas, is there any particular instance that stand out in your mind? Like when you think of your deployment, are there one or two particular instances you always think about?
So when we first arrived at Abu Ghraib, we had a couple mortar attacks, and it seemed like it died down. And then suddenly toward the fall, we would get mortar attack pretty often. But the mortar attacks were generally like 2 or 4, be real quick. Then the one evening we had, I believe it was 42 mortars come in. For a number of hours. It seemed like a number of hours, and they were coming from different positions. So one major instance we had was it September 30th of 2003. One of the members of the 82nd that was pulling security. So we had a mortar attack. The soldier was Sergeant A.J. Baddock. So never met him, but he was assisting with the security, and the Humvee ahead of him was driving, and he slid into the canal. A.J. Baddock immediately got out of his vehicle and jumped in. So both those soldiers lost their lives. So Sergeant Baddock actually was from Jim Thorpe, which is not far from my hometown of Tamaqua. So it's amazing that we're both in a foreign country, and a soldier who's less than 30 miles from my hometown had perished in Iraq. It's just
crazy.
Yes, yeah, very, very crazy.
So, tell me a little bit about your homecoming.
Yeah, so we left the Bougarie prison, went back to Camp Airwolf for a few weeks, and then we're waiting for our plane ride, and then finally arrived back to Fort Dix, and then we were there for a few days, and we went back to Ashley, Pennsylvania for the 320th MP Battalion, and my wife and brother, they all came up and visited, and then so it was wonderful finally having the last day of active duty.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Did you do any finance type work at all when you were over there?
No, none.
Not interesting.
Nope. So when things were quiet down at one point, I had done. They were doing like tours of Babylon, the town of Babylon. So they hopped us on a transport. I'm trying to remember. I don't recall the vehicle, but we walked through the big complex of Babylon. It was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
let me ask a couple of generic questions, if you will. So we're at this military event, obviously today, World War II weekend. There's a lot of young kids walking around, and you're wearing a hat right now that identifies yourself as a retired Army. If you had like a teenage kid come up to you today and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about enlisting in the U.S. Army," what advice would you give to him on how to succeed in the military? Whether it's Army, Air Force, what advice would you give him how to succeed in military culture?
So I would say to begin, your military experience will help you for the future. So if you don't make an entire career out of the military, it could help you set your future goals. So any type of education you can get from the military. So if you find something that you can enjoy or you like, you can use that to your advantage. So if you had gone from the military to the civilian sector, so one person had asked me, like, what can I do? I said, well, if you were a truck driver in the military, being a truck driver in the civilian sector is a fantastic way. So you have all that education. But if you're in medical, you can always move on. So always think of the future, what the military can provide you for education, and how can you use that throughout your life. So
when you were in the reserves, in the civilian world, was your profession similar to the finance stuff? Were you doing similar work?
So originally in high school, that was my goal, but I did not follow that. I was training to be a forklift driver, and I've been a forklift driver for my rest of my civilian time.
But would you say that your military experience still helps you in the civilian world?
Yes.
You alluded to it earlier.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
We're videotaping this right now, and you're going to get a copy of the video in a couple of months. and we're going to encourage you to submit your story to the Library of Congress Veterans History Project in Washington, D.C. That video will be there theoretically for hundreds of years, and at some point in time, your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandkids might view the video. What would you want them to know about your service to your country?
So I was very proud of being in the Army Reserves. So my Army Reserve training, we did 1 week a month and 2 weeks a year. So our 2-week annual trainings, I over the course of my 22 years of service, I visited 18 states and 6 different countries. So I've been to Panama, Honduras. I've been to Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. So it's just it was just a great opportunity to visit all these different countries. And so like I did a boat trip down the Rhine River in Germany, or we did a tour around Panama City in Panama. I did a tour in Honduras. We actually stood underneath a waterfall. It was just something amazing. So visiting all different parts of the world was just a great opportunity with being in the reserves.
Is there anything else you wanted to add?
So I always think of all my years of service. There was not anything I really did outstanding. I was just being a soldier. But being like here, we're at the Reading Air Show for the World War II weekend. It's amazing to see all the other veterans and all the different branches of service you see, and like throughout all the history that we have. You see the veterans from World War II, Korea, Vietnam. It's just amazing to see all their experiences and how much they donated for our freedom.
I agree 100%. Well, thank you for your contributions. On behalf of the Americans with Wartime Experience, I thank you for your service, and thanks for spending time with us.
Okay, thank you.
It's a pleasure to talk with you.